Hello and welcome to another Morning Mondays. This is episode 45 and I am happy to announce that the first squad of 3rd platoon has been completed, and it is a bolter on the sergeant, grenade launcher and heavy bolter, heavy weapon team. I have also modelled a Voxcaster in there, but I am very unlikely to actually run the Voxcaster in the squad. However, I think it looks really cool and also fits in with the fluff that I'm building up around 3rd platoon. So without further ado, let's just go into the model and hobbying side of things first. I'll then talk a little bit about the fluff for 3rd platoon that I'm developing, and then of course we'll talk about the tactics and how this squad is going to fit in with my other platoons, other units. So these guys were a bit of an interesting topic. So to be honest, guys, I'll say these are some of the roughest models I have had to restore as part of the Great Mordian Restoration Project. There's a couple of reasons for that. First reason is these plastic models are some of the oldest that I own. So there was a lot of paint on them, and also the build quality wasn't all that high, and there was a lot of glue on them as well. So they were not well put together models originally. Now, and this is going to be the case for a lot of 3rd platoon, to be honest. 3rd platoon is actually me redoing some of the worst models in my collection. The ones that are battered and broken, the ones that have just all Mr. Potato Face with the number of paints, the ones that have had bits re-glued onto them so many times that the joints are almost entirely made of glue now, and entire arms are made of glue. It's just bad. So I am actually really proud of how well these guys scrubbed up. Now, they're not perfect. You will notice things like the Voxcaster guy, his right, well, I guess from his perspective, left arm, from our perspective, right arm, is a bit lower than it should be, for example. And he has what looks like, in a cool sort of way, a bullet hole in his armour near the neck area, but it's actually just a glue pock mark, for example. And there's a few of those going around. So the guy who's got the las pistol in his hand, if you actually look closely at his chest, the part of the flak arm that covers the sort of middle bit, that's barely a bit anymore. I've actually had to use the edge highlighting just to make it look like it's more there than it actually is. So yeah, there's a lot of broken bits. The bayonet guy, his bayonet actually was snapped off, and I've had to glue that back on, and it snapped off at the blade, where the blade meets the hilt. And yeah, loads of just little bits. So from a distance, they look absolutely fine, but if you really start looking at them, you can see where some of the issues are. But fortunately, I would say that they have scrubbed up very nicely, and they are a vast improvement over the old models. Now, that's the first reason. Second reason is part of the first reason, which is these guys took a lot of detaling and a lot of cleaning to get them up to the point where I could physically rebuild them and repaint them. So I would say that these guys probably were in and out of the detal constantly for just a really long time, for weeks and weeks and weeks. At one point, actually, when I was finishing off 2nd platoon, they just stayed stewing in their dettol bath for well over a month. So they were really in and out, and just getting layers upon layers of paint off them. And to be honest, they are worse for wear for it. So most of the models, all the bits just fell off. A lot of the models, the bits themselves broke in half. So one of the crazy things that is not in this squad, but is one of the other squads, the Voxcaster guy for that squad, his las gun broke into 3 separate bits, which I had to re-glue back together, and it worked. I mean, Jesus Christ, it worked. But it just shows you basically how old the models were and how much stress they'd already been through. I mean, they'd just been patched up. All the toilets they've been to, and an arm snapped off, glue it back on. just and bit by bit they were just totally worn down. So they have had a lot of attention put into them. You will also know weird things that broke as well, like the feet. Some of the feet are broken in half, and I had to re-glue them or remold them out of green stuff. And the fact you can't really tell that much. I think there's one guy who I've nicknamed like Clubfoot guy, who is just one of the basic lasgun guys with a moustache, no backpack. He is. It's actually the model now, which is second in on the back row from the right, so the three across from the left on the Voxcaster guy. His foot is basically just purely made out of green stuff. So totally battered and broken, but they've done all right. They look good, so they've scrubbed up all right. So my lesson and my advice to anyone out there, my sort of anecdote would be: no model is beyond salvation. If I can bring these models back and the whole of 3rd Platoon back from the brink, then anyone can do it, because these models were totally battered and bloodied and bruised. One other thing that I would say, which was really cool, was seeing the different colours of plastic on the different generations of models. So some of 3rd Platoon were like original release Cajun Guardsmen. Some were older ones that were like eBay rescues, for example, ones that I've picked up in the last 3 or 4 years that were eBay rescues. Some of them I was all the first ones I ever built 15 years ago. So it's really interesting to see the different coloured plastic, and it looks like steadily the plastic that Games Workshop's been using has been getting darker and darker coloured. And back in the day, it used to be almost a really, really light grey plastic, almost white, really, really, really light grey. So it's cool. So that's just talking about the that's just a bit of I thought quite interesting point how the plastic they've used has changed colour. Obviously, the big difference with these guys and previous Mordian platoons is the beret heads. So I've done a full squad with beret heads, and you know what? I'm actually going to do a full platoon with beret heads. I'm going to try and do a full platoon with all beret heads. Isn't that a bit interesting? And I actually really like the way they turned out. So firstly, the beret heads are all Scion beret heads. Okay. I have loads and loads of those left over from my Stormtrooper days, and I have enough to fit out. I've got 3 squads built with them already, and I've had to fill them out with a couple of like sergeant heads and a couple of from the regular Cadian kit and a couple of tank crew kits, but a couple of tank crew sort of scrum caps. But generally speaking, the squads are nearly all beret heads, and it works really well. I really like it, and I actually have another 2 boxes of Scions unopened, which I can go and raid for bits, which will give me enough to do another 2 squads, because they have 9 beret heads in each one, and I'm sure I can scrounge up a regular Vox Speed sergeant head or another vehicle crew head, or even just a bandana. I can, I'm always mixing my heads up in my squads. So I've got enough to do at least another 2 squads. And then after that, I might have to go and buy some third-party bits from like Amber Industries, for example, maybe. We'll see how it goes. But the point is I should be able to do a full platoon with these beret heads. And I'm thinking that the fluff behind these guys is that that 3rd platoon is like the recon platoon, the light infantry platoon. So as the rest of the company is moving along in these big marching columns, because the Mordians don't really, the very old-fashioned Napoleonic style, they march everywhere. As they're all marching in these big infantry columns, obviously they don't want to get ambushed. They need units that are in the vanguard, that are scouting the way, that are making sure it's safe for the columns. So that's what the 3rd platoon of every company is responsible for. It goes ahead of the main infantry columns, forms like a light infantry screen in front of the rest of the columns. And I think the French used to call it, their light infantry used to be called like voltigeurs, I think that's correct. Someone will know down below. put down in the comment section. That's what I believe it is when I've read my old Sharp books and whatnot. They were the light infantry that went ahead. So that's what these guys kind of are, like skirmishers. Except they do that off the tabletop in the fluff when they're marching, when the columns are marching around, and then when battle is drawn, they will form up into the usual Mordian firing line. They fill out the gaps. So they're very flexible. They're both recon, vanguard infantry, light infantry, and they also have the ability to become line infantry as well. So, and the beret, to signify that these guys are a bit more specialist and that they've got additional battlefield duties. These guys will they get the beret heads. Now there's a second sort of cool reason I've done this as well, which is, and I will say this is kind of a happy coincidence, but with 9th edition coming along, and Games Workshop saying that you're going to be able to put units in reserve that can then outflank. My thinking is that I can do that with 3rd platoon. So my 1st and 2nd platoons, my 2 battalions, can deploy on the field of battle as normal, and then when I want to do one of my classic mass infantry outflanking maneuvers I used to do all through 5th and 6th edition, then I can outflank the whole of this platoon, and the berets will represent these are the light infantry that are able to be more manoeuvrable and do flanking maneuvers. So that's pretty cool. And then, to be honest, guys, if editions come and go, or 9th edition comes around and I can't do that, and I can't really represent 3rd platoon in that way, what I found is when I've painted these guys up, because I've painted the berets the same colour as the field caps, and the models are all painted in exactly the same way, both these light infantry squads and the regular Mordian squads, that the berets can easily just be mixed into units. No worries. And from a distance, when I have 100 and 250, maybe even 300 infantry on the field of battle, if 50 of them, 60 of them have got berets, that's only, what, 20% out of 300 guys? 20% out of 250, roughly, if I'm doing the 50 beret head guys. So it's not a problem. It's from a distance you really won't be able to tell. I've actually used some beret heads on other squads and stuff, so it works. I think it works out really well, fluff wise and battlefield wise and modelling wise. I think it looks great, and I think it'll all come together. So tactics for these guys. Why have I chosen these loadouts? How do I envisage using them? Well, and why did I pick these weapons? Well, there's a few reasons. One, I put the bolter on the sergeant because I am thinking I'm going to be taking advantage of the custom regiment trait, which gives you the 18-inch rapid fire. Skilled marksman, I believe it's called. Disciplined shooters. It's called disciplined shooters. So I think disciplined shooters, I want the bolter on the sergeant for that. Secondly, bolter on the sergeant is always a good thing. It's a 1-point investment. If I put one on every infantry squad, it's going to cost me between 15 and 18 points. So really no excuse not to do it. To increase, that's an additional 18 shots I'm going to get every turn, a minimum from these guys, whereas the last pistol rarely does anything. So that's why I've got the Bolton Sergeant. The grenade launcher, right, so the reason, if I'm going for the 18-inch rapid fire, you'd think put a plasma gun in the squad. You are correct, that would be the absolute efficient thing to do. 2 reasons I have not done that. Firstly, I recently painted up a veteran squad which has got 3 plasma guns in it, and so actually for my infantry now I have 6 plasma guns in my veteran squads, and then I have another 4 roughly in my stormtroopers. I've already got 10 plasma guns kind of built up, and I have another 10 veterans for this platoon which are ready to go, which will have 3 plasma guns. So I'm already well stocked in plasma guns on the Mordian Restoration Project. What I don't have a lot of is grenade launchers. In fact, out of the 12 infantry squads I have so far, I only have 3 grenade launchers. So not a lot whatsoever. In fact, the vast majority of my special weapons that I have for my line infantry are melter guns and flamers. So I wanted to paint up. I'm actually I'm actually short on grenade launchers. Amazing. The first time in my guard army, I'm short on grenade launchers. I usually spam those things till the cows come home. So I thought, I've got plenty of flamers, I got plenty of plenty of melter, I got plenty of plasma. I don't have a lot of grenade launchers, so I will paint a grenade launcher up. Now this will actually fit in to the later iterations of the army when I switch round to having foot veterans with grenade launchers. So at the moment I'm playing it fluffy. I've got outflanking veterans with plasma, very nice. In the future, when I run the 300 man army, which is what we're aiming for, all the veterans, all the infantry squads will have plasma guns, and all the veteran squads will have grenade launchers. So what I'm doing is I'm filling in a gap in my list now with a grenade launcher, and for the future I'm painting up what will essentially be a grenade launcher for a veteran squad. So it all works out. Now the heavy bolter is an interesting choice. Again, if we're being purely efficient, the missile launcher is the better way to go at the moment. However, again, it comes down to what weapons I have in the Mordian Restoration project. I already have 2 missile launchers and a las cannon painted up for my Mordians, but I only have 1 old school heavy bolter. So I want to be able to... So I've got a lack of heavy bolters in my army. And heavy bolters are the second best heavy weapon you can give an infantry squad after missile launchers, because it has a high rate of fire but is in that sweet strength 5 bracket, which means you can shoot at anything and it will always be able to take a chunk out of something. You shoot this at a knight, it wounds on a 5 and the knight only gets a 4 up save. Incredible. It's actually really good chipping wounds off knights with heavy bolters. Likewise, you can shoot at infantry, and even if you're shooting Primaris, you're still wounding on 3s, and even if you're shooting at something like aggressors, you still wound them on 4s. So it's in that sweet strength 5 bracket. However, so it's still a good choice. Yes, the right choice would be missile launchers, but I already have a couple of them and a las cannon, so this was the weapon I was going after. And also, I have painted up plenty of assault squads for my army already. Assault squads being my no heavy weapon, just a close range special weapon for the infantry squads. In fact, out of the 12 infantry squads I've painted, only 3 of them I use regularly with heavy weapons. I normally run 2 missile launchers and a las cannon, and I swap out the heavy bolter for the las cannon for the heavy bolter if I'm short on points. So I actually have, in the Great Mordian Restoration Project, a real difficulty with long-range firepower. Unless I want to ally in tanks from another regiment, to be honest, the Mordians themselves can't stand alone on the heavy weapon front. So I need to paint more heavy weapons up. The first 3 squads of the platoon are all going to be outfitted in this way. So they're all going to have heavy bolters, bolts from the sergeant, and a grenade launcher. The second half of the platoon, the next 3 squads, I'm not sure what I'm going to arm those guys with yet, but it will probably be, I think it's going to be more fire support. And I suspect it depends what mood I'm in at the time of building the squads. If I'm in a fluffy bunny mood, I'll give them 3 sniper rifles. If I'm in a hardcore mood, they'll get 3 plasma guns, and we'll start the plasma train properly. The reason it will and what will really influence it will be what I'm doing at the time. So if I am back to playing games, hopefully lockdown will be ended by then, I'll be able to do games and play battle reports. If that's the case, then I'll probably be wanting to be a bit more hardcore, and I'll be painting up the plasma guns. If it's still lockdown, I'll probably still be in a bit of a fluffy bunny mood, and then I'll be like, yay, snipers, let's paint those up because I haven't got any yet. So it'll depend. So before I finish this video, I would like to say that speaking of general overall tactics, I think with my infantry and with 8th edition, I would say I've been playing very fluffy bunny. I've been playing very fluffy bunny. I've not been playing super hardcore. I would actually go as far to say the whole of 8th edition, I have not really run a competitive pure infantry list. I've spent this entire edition either running fluffy bunny infantry lists with my Mordian restoration project, or running like hybrid lists, but even then, it's been all tanks. When I've been playing for like battle reports, it's often been like hybrid guard lists. But when the tournaments I've been to 3 tournaments. Is it 3 or 4? 2, 3. I'm gonna say 4 tournaments over 8th edition with my Steel Legion, and they are the ones that have actually been my tournament army for the last 2.5 years. So it'll be, so what I think is, 8th edition's been a nice experiment. We've tried different things out. 8th edition has been the fun edition where I've just been like, you know what, Guard's been strong enough that I can try out crazy shit. Guard are no longer that super powerful anymore. To be honest, bit by bit over the edition, Guard has got weaker and weaker, or we've stayed the same, been nerfed a bit, whilst everyone else has got stronger around us. So now we've gone from being top tier to middle of the pack. Bit of a wild ride, to be honest. So I think 9th edition will be a great excuse for me to be like, you know what, I've had an edition of fluff. I've had an edition of fun. Now it is time with 9th edition to go hardcore again. Pure infantry, hardcore tournament tactics. I probably went to, over the course of 8th edition, I must have gone to at least a dozen tournaments. I've been to I must have been to at least 2 dozen tournaments, because I've been to at least 2 a year with the local club, so that's 6 over the last, and then I've been to at least the same again at other. I've been to at least the same again to like Warhammer World events, and then I would say last but not least, I've probably been to another half dozen, maybe another 10 at other venues around the country. So I've been to sort of small or grand tournaments or team tournaments or whatever. So I've been to I'd say I've been to at least sort of a dozen dozen to 2 dozen tournaments over the last 24 months, and they've all been like fluffy. When I've taken like fluffy lists, so I've taken my Steel Legion to like 3 of them. I've taken my Black Templar, Black Tide to like 3 tournaments. Taken my Steel Legion to at least 6. I've taken like hybrid armies to at least another 6, and I've tried it all out, and I think it's been a fun edition, 8th edition, but now 9th edition is when we get back in that hardcore seat, and this is where I'm going to be really seeing how much I can push it with the pure infantry, and really proving that my pure infantry army is competitive again. And to be honest, guys, last thing to say, it's a bit weird, but like I've almost been out of the pure infantry game for like 2.5 years now. I've run them occasionally here and there in battle reports, but competitive, proper tournament 40k, I've not run my pure infantry like that for 2.5 years. Not properly. I mean, there's been like I said, there's been fluffy events, narrative events, fluffy battle reports, all that kind of stuff, but proper hardcore grand tournaments, I don't know if you say my head's been turned, but I've been trying different stuff. I got really good with my Steel Legion at competitive events. I'd say I'm actually almost best with my Steel Legion at the moment, but now it's time to get back to the pure infantry, and it's all about no frills, no upgrades. Let's get super efficient. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you look forward to the more sort of hardcore edition that 9th edition will be for this channel. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.